and welcome in. This is the Third Degree with Jacob and Ryan. How you doing today, Ryan?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, Jake. Just got home, got off work, tired, but ready to get a chance to hang out with you, do the new show. Kind of a cool new thing for us to be able to do, to just kind of continue building on what we talk about on Sundays. So it's pretty exciting, man.
And just different form of fellowship, which I know is something that's highly important with our church and something that we always strive to do.
Yeah, and the other thing I really like about it is it gives us a chance to kind of leverage online, because it's a really interesting thing about our church is, although people are busy, I talked about that this last Sunday.
Well, I was about to bring up being tired.
and we can talk about that, but so many people access West Metro online on Facebook that this just gives us another opportunity for people to be able to engage. So pretty excited about it, dude.
I am too.
So what's the format going to be like? Let's explain really quick what the format's going to look like.
So I kind of figured it'd be more of a Q&A. So if there's anyone out there that watches us online that has any questions, they can either post them on the actual sermon, our Facebook Live that we do. Mm-hmm. And during those, I'll probably just shoot out my number and say, hey, if you have any further questions you want me to ask Ryan, anything more in depth that you want us to go into, you can text me without, having your name put on it. However they want to do it. However, other questions from outside people, outside of just my own thoughts and my own kind of ideas on this, I'd kind of do that. It'd be more like a Q&A. A lot of things that I plan on asking, I kind of want to go a little deeper, and then just some of the more simple things on it. Like my first question for you, for those that are just entering into being a Christian or just beginning their walk, what is the Sabbath?
Yeah, Jake, that's a really good question, man. A really good thing to kick off. So in the book of Exodus, the 10 Commandments are given to the children of Israel. Actually, they're given to Moses on top of a mountain, and he gets them on 2 tablets, and he carries them down. And one of the 10 Commandments is to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And it's tied to the idea that God created the world in 7 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And his command for his people is that they would take a Sabbath or a rest, and that would be an entire day from sun up to sundown. That's how long a Sabbath day was. And they would not do any work. It was a day that was supposed to be devoted to rest and to worship. And so that's what the Sabbath is.
All right, and I know during your sermon there were certain things that they kind of, as history progressed from that point, that it became more of a nitpicky kind of thing. What work was. You want to go into some of those that you were talking about?
Yeah, I mentioned them on Sunday, but it's so funny, man. God gives us a really good thing, and then we tend to screw it up pretty royally.
As the nature of being human.
As is very much the nature of being human. So like, for example, if, just to use this cord right here for an example, if I was trying to pay you for something on the Sabbath, I was trying to do my offering, and I were to hand it to you, that's fine. But if I had it laying in my hand and you picked it up, that would be work.
That's so crazy.
And there were all these little nitpicky things. There's several of them that I always like to talk about, like the needle and the tunic and things like that. But basically, it went from what was supposed to be relaxation to actually more stressful than probably any other day.
It became more work than what
it was supposed to be. Yeah, exactly right.
So actually getting into a little, just kind of the things, a lot of you out there probably don't know me, but I'm a very track and field related guy, and I can appreciate, I will call this one out. Your very first quote is that you said, I'm so far behind that I'm in first.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I had a race to where I was like that once.
You were that slow?
And I was that slow once, believe it or not.
I was that slow all the time, so that's all good.
And so I totally get it as far as the physical look at it. And as far as being busy and as far as being a Christian and having a busy lifestyle, like you have 4 kids. I have no kids. But I always seem to be busy, and it's something like that, and it's something where it seems to be, it's really hard to just take time out to, just find time to read God's word or just sit there and, say, hey, how can I communicate to God today? What's some advice to new Christian, old Christian, anywhere in between on things that you've done throughout 4 kids, you're busier than most people here.
Yeah.
What are some things that you do in your daily walk to where you've had time to Bible study or where you've been able to just sit down and pray?
So, man, I think some of that goes into kind of how we build priorities into our lives and figuring out how the rhythm of how God has built us. I mean, I'm a very early morning person, an early riser. My wife makes fun of me because morning is my favorite time. I mean, even on the weekends. I mean, I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, just naturally. That's just when I wake up.
Right.
And so part of that means for me is that I've got to structure my day to where I can go to bed at a decent hour because I need to get up and read the Word and do that kind of stuff before I go to work. And so that means I say no to a lot of stuff. I mean, if somebody says to me, they call me up at 8 o'clock at night and they're like, hey, Ryan, we're going to get together and go out and hang out or whatever. It's not that I don't want to go. It's just that I'm probably going to say no because the rhythm and structure of my life, I need to be in bed by 10 o'clock or at least laying down, kind of starting to, watching Friends, trying to nod off or whatever. So I think a large part of this for everybody when it comes to this idea of building rhythm, man, is you got to set the priorities and things in your life. And priorities for people are going to be different at different stages. Like you mentioned, I've got 4 kids. So priorities for me are going to look very different from somebody who doesn't have kiddos yet.
Like
or from like you, or from somebody who's an empty nester, whose kids have gone and left. And because you're at different levels even of disposable income and that kind of stuff. But I think that starts with, asking God, what are the priorities? God, what am I saying yes to that I feel like I'm saying yes to out of obligation rather than out of passion or calling? What am I saying no to that I really should be saying yes to, but I can't because I've said all these other yeses? I think that's the real battle for us today because I think everybody feels the pressure of expectations in different ways. I feel in my role as a pastor and in my role in my job, I feel expectations from certain realms. Everybody has those different feelings of expectations. And I think that a lot of it comes down to, I will often find myself being tempted to spend a lot more time trying to please other people before I try to please God. And we've got to get to where we were talking about on Sunday, we've got to turn that on its head. We've got to say, okay, I believe God's going to take care of me. I believe God's going to provide for me. And so the first thing for me to do is to try to please God and to say yes to the things He would have me say yes to. And here's the thing, dude. That doesn't just mean I need to study my Bible and pray every day. That means I may need to change my job.
Right.
I may need to be satisfied with the car that I currently have rather than going out and putting myself in debt and buying a car that I don't need but I just want because my car's 3 or 4 years old. My car's 20 years old, so I don't have any sympathy for that. So. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is we prioritize our lives a lot of times around the wrong thing, and that's where we kind of get into this busyness thing.
Right. And it goes back to the whole thing as far as what are we seeing in our lives that we're putting in our lives that are worldly compared to things that God wants us to have in our lives that's going to bring value to Him and bring value to your life. And bring more fruit to your vine and be able to bring more followers to God.
Right.
And something that you said on Sunday, you said I'm a pastor. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And so So a lot of people see pastors as, oh my gosh, it's the pastor. He's the closest thing to God that we're going to see.
Right.
It's just kind of that stigma that we have in today's world.
Yeah, I embrace it. I don't have any other choice.
So what are some things that you think, as far as, the congregation, like you and myself and you have a really good friendship. I don't see you in that light at all. I really don't see any pastor in that kind of light. So what are some things as far as a society and as far as like from my realm, like I'm not a pastor. And when somebody, talks to me about, well, you're a pastor, he stands on stage and he preaches and all that. What are some things that we can kind of, as a society, as we sit here and we talk about being tired and, busy and all this. A lot of the busy, to me, a lot is busy minds as well, too. And that's something that's busy minded. What's something we can do to kind of see pastors are actual people as well, too?
Well, and the
sorry for the long word.
No, you're fine. I felt like Phil Larson was asking you. So the context of that was we talking about the fact that I really came to a point in time about 8 or 9 years ago where I literally almost lost my faith.
Right.
And that if I can do that and I'm a pastor, I'm supposed to have it all together, then I think anybody possibly could. And I think that's the thing that people need to realize a lot of times is anybody who's in a ministerial role does feel that extra added pressure of they've got to have it all together and they've got to be able to have this ready answer or whatever. And I think the greatest thing you can do for any pastor is to give them the same grace that they extend to you, to understand that although they want to be everywhere at every time, they want to serve everybody at every time, that if they don't guard their own hearts and their own lives and their own schedule, then just like somebody who works at a bank or somebody who works at a mortgage company or somebody who's a stay-at-home mom, they can ultimately wind up putting their faith at risk as well. And that's pretty brutal. And I have seen, unfortunately, even in the last few months, some very high-profile ministers, pastors, that have literally left the faith, literally walked away from the faith and been very public about it. I mean, probably one of the most prominent ones is a guy named Joshua Harris, who wrote a book in the 90s called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. It was kind of like the dating Bible for the homeschool set. And that actually kind of existed, and somebody out there will think that's funny. But
I have no idea.
he literally walked away from his marriage and his kids and walked away from the faith. Wow. And so much of it was because he felt like he was inadequate to meet the standards that people were putting on him and that he had put on himself. And so therefore it literally has caused him to walk away from even believing in God. That to me is tragic. And here's the thing, dude. I will leave the pastorate before I will leave Jesus. Yeah. Because I care more about maintaining my faith and building my family's faith than I care about building a church. And I think that crisis of faith that I went through is kind of got me there, because now I'm just like, I need to talk about it openly when I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time. And thankfully, I think our church can handle that, which is pretty cool.
I mean, and you're talking to someone over here who, up until the point that I really was our church, I didn't believe in God for 3 years. Mm-hmm. I full on watched the videos, read the things, did all the things that you would expect from an atheist. Mm-hmm. The whole, Christians just pray to, they're just talking to the wind. Come on, what are we doing here? Right. Those kind of things. I said those things. Sure. And for those of you out there, listening to, us having a conversation here, it's a real thing. That whole completely, someone that from my point of view, it was, holy cow, it is the pastor. Wow. Closest thing to God. And then the next message you hear from him is that he spews nothing but hate. That can completely ruin your faith. And so it's that thing of guarding your heart, and something I'm much more aware of now than I was when I was in college, and I decided to go, okay, no, I'm done. This is not a thing. Right. And so it is something, yes, that especially early on in your walk as well too, you have to pay attention to. You do.
That's why you need to surround. That's why we ask people, if they make a decision for Christ, to come and meet somebody at the back. It's because we don't want somebody beginning that relationship and not having somebody there to support them and answer questions. Because the truth of the matter is, and this, man, following Jesus is not easy. It's hard. Yeah. And it's going to put you in some hard spaces and some hard situations. And that's why we need each other. That's why we need the church.
Yeah. And it's the whole reliability partner, reliability friend, whatever you have. And listen, going through Christianity is not going to be something where you're going to make a lot of friends initially, because a lot of the times when you make that decision, you still have those core friends that were tragic and terrible for your life. And so, and that also, being alone is busy in itself too. Yeah. That initial point of, well, none of these guys get me, and again,
you're like the alien. You're the odd man out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's crazy. So when we're talking to people that are going through that, what are advices that you can give people like that?
So I think one of the things is that we have a responsibility to people who we knew in that old life to share the gospel with them. But sometimes the best thing is for us, as we are sharing the gospel with them, we need to be building gospel friendships with people who do know and who do believe, so that we have kind of that support and those answers. And I think that being a part of a church is important, but developing a relationship with 2 or 3 people that are inside of that church, like you were talking about, those reliable friends, those accountability partners, whatever you want to call them. Right. And that means that you've got to be open to that. And I think sometimes, that can be, for some people, that's very, very intimidating, because it's like, well, I don't know as much as these people know. Well, yeah, you're exactly right. That's why you need the friends and the relationships. And I think For some people, that's a lot harder than others because it's like, well, it's a pride thing. If I'm here and I'm saying I need to learn, I need to know more, that's tough. But you know what? That's just kind of part of it, man. That's part of figuring it out. And so I think plugging into a church and finding, if you're a guy, finding a couple of dudes that you're like, okay, I really click with this guy. Maybe I click with this guy over something else that we share, like
sports.
Baseball or track and field, or you're a big book guy and you're always reading the latest and greatest, or you're a politics person, or you're somebody who who really enjoys a good cigar or something like that, and finding those bonds and being like, okay, this is kind of my entry point into these relationships, and then kind of building from there. And learning from those folks and being open to learning. I think that's probably the biggest thing, man, is, following Jesus is humbling enough, but then entering into those relationships and being like, okay, this person's known Jesus for dozens, 20, 30 years, and I've known him for like 20 hours.
Right. That's kind of our relationship as a perfect example. Someone who's known Jesus for 20 years up until the point that I met you, and then, developing that, hey, I'm Jake. For me, I'm Jake. That's the new guy. Jacob was before. Jacob was incredibly hateful. In case you guys want to know.
Ryan and Jacob wouldn't have gotten along.
No, and I don't think we did initially either.
Oh man!
But it is about building those relationships,
it
especially early on, because it's just it's hard being a first-time Christian. It's hard going into that faith and knowing that a lot of your old friends who aren't followers aren't going to just willingly okay, well, yeah, let's go and do this.
Yeah, you did it, so I did it. And I think that goes back to the time thing, which is what the whole sermon was focused on this last Sunday, is in order to do that, you have to be willing to give the time. You have to be willing to commit the time. And that means some things are going to have to fall away. And the thing is some of the things that fall away are just bad. I mean, you come to know Christ and it's like, yeah, I really got to give up getting drunk every Saturday night because that's not something God would want me to do, or I've really got to give up, looking at porn 24/7, and that's going to free up some of your time.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not necessarily giving up something that's bad as much as it's giving up something or walking away from something that's not as productive as God would want you to be. I mean, here's the thing, man. The biggest thing for me in my early walk that was a big breaking point was video games. And for some people, I know you're just like, you gave up video? Yeah, I really did. I went through this whole deal with my accountability group where we all committed to fast from something for 40 days. And mine was video games, because I basically would come home from work and I would play video games from the time I got home from work till my wife got home, and then after dinner I would play basically until I went to bed. And so that freed up about 4 to 5 hours of time a day, and then more on the weekends. And it's funny, the first 2 or 3 days I missed it. I didn't really know how to spend my time or what to fill my time with. By the time we got to the end of that 40 days, I may pick up a video game controller once every couple of months. And that's really pretty much about it. And it's funny because that used to be my whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I might find some time to do this occasionally. But the other thing is it winds up boring me. I'm bored.
Right.
So it's weird how if you will ask God to show you what needs to change, He will not just help you to see it, but He'll help change your appetites, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. And as far as going on the fasting, I do a sports one every year because I find it incredibly important that if I don't, it just consumes so much of who I am.
I bet, man.
And you know me pretty well. It does consume a lot of who I am.
It does, and you do, and I remember it because you do it every year, because I'll say something to you about it and you'll be like, I'm on my sports fast. I'm like, well, dang it.
The one guy I wanted to talk
to. So I think we got time for about one more question. So what's the last one?
So on here, as far as the friends and as far as, time and everything, I thought you said something on yesterday that was incredibly, incredibly important. As far as in our broken world, we're replaceable. And it's those things when talking about going back with our friends, I think that's something that you also have to remember. You got to remember as well, in that same hand, is that we are beautifully created by God.
Right. And
those are children of God still. And so they are replaceable. I can't talk.
That's okay.
So in remembering those kind of things, what do we do about that? Like, as far as remembering they're God's people, but I need to replace them to free up our time and it's an incredibly hard thing to do.
So I think that's pretty tough, because when I mean by being replaceable, I mean that if you were,
it was in the context of work.
If you were to win a lottery and move to a tropical island with you and your wife, and just for the rest of your life,
right,
your friends would find somebody else to be their friend. They would find somebody else to, there would be the Jacob 2.0. His name might not be Jacob, but that person would slide in there. And I think that's the thing when we realize that our lives really are fleeting, and because of that, it means that we need to be doing the things that make the most maximum impact. So if you're talking about as a person who's become a believer, and you have these friends that aren't, the biggest impact you're going to have on their life is showing them how Jesus is changing your life and inviting them into that. And if they're not there yet, then you should continue to pray for them, and you should continue to encourage them and share with them. But they're eventually going to replace you, because the things they're pursuing are not going to be the things you're pursuing anymore. So you're going to be less and less in their lives. And that can cause a lot of people a lot of consternation to be like, well, I don't know if I really want to do that. But the truth of the matter is that you can't be a follower of Jesus and continue to try to fit into your life things that are not honoring to God. And so you're naturally, if you're going to pursue Christ, you're naturally going to be replacing those other people's lives. And I think you have to be okay with that. The only time I would say you shouldn't be okay with that is if you're retreating from them without offering to bring them with you to Jesus. I don't think that coming to a place where we're like, well, I don't want to do those things anymore, and so I'm just not going to talk to those guys anymore. I'm just not going to hang around those girls anymore. That's not an option for a Christian. What is an option is to say, I'm going to hang out with you. You start doing stuff that I know I can't do anymore. I'm going to be like, deuces. I'll catch you guys later. I'm not doing that with you anymore. And I think that's the thing. I've talked to guys over the years that that's the hardest deal, because men in particular develop relationships in a difficult fashion anyhow. It's not always easy for us to make friends. And so for a lot of times, a lot of guys, it's really hard I'm going to separate myself out of this, because that's kind of what we've based our friendships on. And I think that for all men and women, one of the real keys is we've got to build our relationships around things that are godly. And so with your old friendships, if you can build some relationships with them still around things like sports, or like going fishing, or your families getting together and hanging out and having barbecue or whatever, that's one thing. But the things that you used to do with them that were not honoring to God, those are the things you're going to step out into. And they're going to replace you in those things. And that's okay, because God's going to honor your obedience to Him, and hopefully call your friends to follow Him as well.
That's right.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Cool. Man, I feel like I've been through the third degree.
That was cheesy.
Hey, we really appreciate you guys joining us. This will be posting every single week. We're thinking that it's going to regularly post on Wednesdays after it goes through post-production. I look forward to hanging out with my man Jake every Monday doing this deal. Just to reiterate, if you've got questions post-sermon, one of the things you can do is find Jacob after church.
If you're there, come find me. I'll give you my numbers if you want to text it to me. Or if you have them written down and you want to hand them to me. I'll gladly take them. Or if you want to put them on the Facebook for West Metro and you want to put your questions there, that also will work.
You do the same with me. You can text them to me. You can write them down and hand them to me, and Jake and I will conspire and get stuff together and make sure. One of the big priorities for us, this is our dry run, so production will improve. We'll figure that out.
That's right.
But we will prioritize questions that come from people that are directly from the sermon, and then other things that come out of Jake's brain, and anything I feel like I need to go on. So thanks for joining us for the inaugural voyage of the Third Degree. We'll see you Sunday at West Metro for worship, and we'll catch you guys online next week with Third Degree Part 2.
All right.
Later.
Sounds good.
All right, take it easy.